I used to brush off the small victories, like they didn't matter. That afternoon, I sat at my desk with a tiny silver key in my palm, the kind of key you'd overlook if it wasn't attached to something important. It was the final piece of a modest property sale, a clean little deal that had closed without drama. By all accounts, it was success. But I didn't feel successful. The office around me hummed with its usual rhythm. Phones ringing, conversations drifting in and out, keyboards tapping like rain against glass. A faint bitterness of coffee lingered in the air, mixing with the paper dust smell of the copier down the hall. Someone laughed across the room, a loud, confident laugh, the kind that makes you turn your head. They were talking about a major sale, a high-profile client, numbers that dwarfed the one written on my paperwork. I curled my fingers around the key, trying to feel the weight of it, but it barely pressed into my skin. It felt light, insignificant. This isn't big enough to matter, I thought. On my desk sat a small vase of daisies a friend had brought me weeks earlier. They were wilting now, petals softening at the edges, but still catching sunlight where it fell through the blinds. They seemed to whisper something I couldn't hear. All I could feel was disappointment. The truth was, even though I had completed the deal, I felt invisible, not just to my colleagues, but to myself. I didn't clap for me. I didn't pause to breathe in the achievement. I didn't let the win land. Instead, I dismissed it like I always did. Not big enough, not worth it. Doesn't prove anything. I twirled the key between my fingers. In another context, this object would be a symbol, a new beginning for the buyer, security, hope. But in my hands, it was reduced to something forgettable. That's how I've lived so much of my life, downgrading the small things until they feel like nothing, shrinking my wins until I barely recognize them as mine. And as I sat there with the key pressing lightly into my palm, surrounded by the noise of bigger deals, in louder voices, I believed the lie that has haunted me for years. This isn't big enough to matter. I don't matter. I was always waiting for the big success before I let myself feel proud. That belief didn't start in real estate. It started much earlier. In school, a 95% on an exam wasn't enough. I'd skim past the red circle on the paper, fixating on the missing 5%. Family and teachers would congratulate me, but in my chest, I felt the absence more than the presence. Not perfect, not worth celebrating. At home, small milestones blurred into the background. My parents saved their biggest praise for graduation ceremonies, awards, firsts that could be announced to relatives. Ordinary days, the hours of studying, the steady progress, the quiet resilience went unnoticed. So I learned to notice only what was spectacular. Culturally, too, I absorbed the message. Pride belongs to the big moments. The rest is just preparation, invisible labor, stepping stones not worth pausing on. By the time I entered the workforce, this had calcified into a pattern. Every small success felt like nothing more than a placeholder, something to be endured until the real achievement came along. So when I sold that modest property, the joy barely flickered in me before I brushed it away. Do you do this too? Do you brush off your small achievements as if they don't count? Do you wait for the headline moment before you allow yourself to feel pride? That's how I've lived most of my life, rushing past the quiet wins, starving myself of gratitude, setting the bar higher every time I approach it. In real estate, it shows up everywhere. I'll close a smaller deal and immediately compare it to the bigger ones on the board. I'll help a client through a difficult decision and think, well, it's not life-changing. I'll meet a deadline I've been struggling with and shrug. It's just what I should have done anyway. The obsession with milestones makes every step feel like a non-event. It narrows life down to rare, glittering occasions, while everything in between blurs into disappointment. That day in the office, colleagues barely looked up when I placed the paperwork on the desk. One gave me a polite smile. Another didn't even glance over. And instead of grounding myself in my own quiet pride, I absorbed their indifference and mirrored it. I tucked the key away. I shrugged. I told myself, this doesn't matter. But here's the paradox. The big wins I idolize are built on the small ones I dismiss. Every house is made of bricks. Every marathon is run step by step. Every sunrise is made of gradual light, not a sudden blaze. And yet, I've been living as if the bricks are nothing. The steps don't matter. The gradual light isn't worth looking at. I've been living as if small wins don't exist, or worse, as if they're proof of my smallness. But when I really think about it, ignoring the small wins has cost me more than I admit. It has drained joy from my work. It has numbed me to gratitude. It has made me feel invisible, even in moments I should have been celebrating. And maybe you know that feeling too. Maybe you've brushed past your own progress, waiting for a milestone big enough to finally count. Maybe you felt invisible in your own story, convinced that unless you arrive at the headline, nothing along the way is worth noticing. If so, I want you to know I've been there. I still go there. And that day, with the tiny key pressing into my palm and the daisies glowing on my desk, I went there again. Because I hadn't yet learned what I know now, that every brick matters in the house being built. The celebration never came. Later that evening, after the paperwork was signed and the last emails were sent, I sat at my desk, half expecting someone to say something. A congratulations, a quick, well done, even a casual high five, but nothing came. The office buzzed with its usual energy. Colleagues chatted about bigger listings, louder deals, clients with recognizable names. My sale wasn't even on their radar. To them, it was a drop in the ocean, barely worth a ripple. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter, but the truth is, their silence cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I opened my phone, hoping for a message, a friend, a colleague, someone who might have noticed, but the screen stayed dim. The only notifications cluttered reminders and promotions. No congrats, no proud of you, just silence. That silence echoed louder than any celebration could have. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling tiles, the fluorescent light casting its harsh glow. My shoulders slumped, my breath grew shallow, and in that moment, the thought loop surged again. This doesn't matter. You don't matter. It didn't matter that I had guided a young couple through their first purchase with patience. It didn't matter that I had solved problems quietly along the way. It didn't matter that the deal closed smoothly because of the groundwork I had laid. All I could see was the absence of applause, the lack of recognition, the emptiness where validation should have been. And here's the part that stung most. I didn't celebrate myself either. I shrugged off my own achievement as if it were nothing. I told myself it was too small to be worth noticing. I dismissed the effort, the persistence, the care I had poured into it. I made myself invisible in my own story. That was the collapse. Not just that others overlooked me, but that I overlooked me too. My shoulders curled in. My eyes drifted down to the tiny vase of daisies, still sitting on my desk, petals curling, but still catching light. They seemed to mock me with their persistence. We bloom anyway. Why don't you? But I couldn't hear it then. All I could hear was the thought loop pressing against my ribs. This doesn't matter. I don't matter. And for a moment, I believed it, completely. But later, as I walked home, something shifted. It was a quiet evening, the kind where the air cools gently, and the streetlights flicker on, one by one. I walked slowly, the weight of my bag pressing into my shoulder, my steps heavy at first. My phone was silent in my pocket. My mind replayed the day. The key in my palm, the silence of my colleagues, the dim phone screen. Then, without meaning to, I noticed my own footsteps, the steady rhythm of heel, then toe, heel, then toe, echoing softly on the pavement. For the first time all day, I paid attention. Each step was small, almost invisible, but together, they were carrying me forward. Without them, I would never arrive anywhere. I slowed down, letting the thought sink in. Every step counts. I whispered it softly at first, unsure if I believed it. Every step counts. Then I thought about the couple who had just bought their first home, the way their eyes lit up when they held their own keys. That mattered. It might not have been a record sale, but it was a milestone in their lives, and I was part of it. I thought about the hours I had spent guiding them, the small details I had handled quietly, the care I had taken to make sure the process felt safe. That mattered too. I thought about the key itself, tiny, silver, almost weightless in my palm. On its own, small, but for the couple, it opened an entire chapter. Every step counts. I said it again, this time more steady. Every step counts. Because the truth is, the big wins I idolize are made up of small ones. The house is built brick by brick. The journey is walked step by step. The sunrise comes light by light, not all at once. I had been dismissing the very foundation of success, waiting only for the milestones, blind to the path that carried me there. That night, walking under the soft glow of the street lamps, I chose to let it in. My small win mattered. The tiny key mattered. My effort mattered. And as the words settled in me, the shame dissolved into something else. Gratitude, presence, pride. For the first time, I celebrated the small. And it was enough. That night, when I finally sat down at home, the silence pressed in. No colleagues around me, no phone buzzing with distractions, just the soft hum of the fridge and the muted glow of the lamp on my desk. The tiny key from the sale lay on the table in front of me. I stared at it for a while, letting its smallness sink in. For most of the day, I had dismissed it. But now, after my slow walk home, after repeating my mantra, I felt something different. I pulled a notebook closer, the same one I usually filled with to-do lists, deadlines, and quick reminders. Tonight, I decided to use it for something else. I wrote at the top of the page, "Micro wins." At first, my pen hovered awkwardly. The voice in my head still tried to argue. What's the point? These aren't real victories. They're too small to matter. But I pressed the tip of the pen to the page anyway and wrote the first one. Closed a deal today. Clients got their first home. The words looked plain on paper, but the moment I saw them, I felt my chest soften. It was real. It had happened, and it mattered. I wrote another. Remembered to eat lunch, even though I was busy. Then another. Answered a nervous client's call with patience instead of frustration. 3 small wins. Simple, almost ordinary. But as I wrote them down, I realized how quickly I usually let them vanish, like steam disappearing into the air. And yet, here they were, solid in ink, undeniable, proof that progress was alive in me. The pen glided smoothly across the paper, leaving marks that grounded me. I could feel the weight of my hand pressing down, leaving evidence. For once, I didn't just rush past the moment. I captured it. I sat back and read the list out loud. Closed a deal today. Remembered to eat lunch. Answered a call with patience. It didn't sound spectacular. It didn't sound like a headline. But it sounded human. It sounded like forward motion. And as I whispered the affirmation I had written at the bottom of the page, each step matters, something in me relaxed. I realized joy multiplies when noticed. Gratitude grows and when named. And small wins, once ignored, can actually anchor me in pride instead of pushing me deeper into invisibility. So this became my practice. Each night, I write 3 micro wins from the day. No matter how tiny, no matter how ordinary. It might be finishing an email. It might be choosing rest instead of overworking. It might be simply showing up. And with every line I write, I remind myself, every step counts. Small steps are still progress. That's what I want to leave you with tonight. Not the pressure of milestones, not the endless wait for the big moment to finally give you permission to feel worthy. Just the truth that every small step you take carries you closer. I used to dismiss the little things, the quiet wins, the steady progress, the moments no one else clapped for. But I see now that those moments were never small. They were bricks in the house I'm building. They were steps in the journey I'm still walking. They were proof that my life is moving forward, even when the spotlight isn't on me. So tonight, I'm choosing to celebrate them. The tiny key in my palm. The pen gliding across my page. The 3 simple lines that remind me I'm alive and trying. Every step counts. And as I say it now, I feel it shift in me from a hesitant whisper into a steady truth. Every step counts. Sometimes the smallest step is the one that saves you. So here's what I'm doing tonight. I'm writing down 3 small wins. I'm not waiting for a milestone. I'm not waiting for someone else to clap. I'm letting myself clap first. I'm letting myself celebrate now. Because joy doesn't just live in the finish lines. It lives in the steps along the way. As I close my notebook, I look out the window and see dawn light beginning to seep into the room. Soft, slow, almost unnoticeable at first. But it grows. It fills the space. It transforms everything. That's how progress works. That's how we work. Every step counts.